Welcome to Living in the Flow Radio on the Amazing Women of Power Network. I'm Dr. Ruth Cherry. My new book is just out, Accepting Unconditional Love. That's what I want to talk about today. Accepting unconditional love. Doesn't that sound fabulous? It sounds better than Christmas. It sounds like standing in the street and having diamonds fall all around you. Doesn't quite feel like that, but that's an interesting image to start with. Unconditional love is always, always, always available to us. We can accept it or we can resist it. Last week we talked about resistance. We resist accepting unconditional love by feeling unworthy. Some of us have learned that we're just not good enough. We're not quite acceptable to other folks. There's something missing in us. For some reason, we're not worthy of love. We don't quite know why, and we don't quite know how to make up that deficiency, but we feel lacking. Some of us have been conditioned about accepting love. Maybe every time we've been loved, there's been a little bit of abuse tied with it. Love comes with being treated badly. Maybe love comes with eventual abandonment, so we learn to fear love and avoid it. Maybe love comes with other added things that we don't want. We feel diminished when we feel loved. Love is very complicated on a human level. Unconsciously, we've adjusted to that. We've changed ourselves in order to make love relationships turn out somewhat right on a human level. But where does that leave us when we want to open to accept unconditional love? Because unconditional love is always available to us. We can accept it or we can resist it. If we want to accept unconditional love, we have to be firmly anchored in who we are. We can't be wondering about our worthiness. We can't be feeling not good enough. We can't be looking for something to complete us. We're anchored in our eternal center. We've talked about that every session, I think. Our human center and our eternal center. We're anchored in our eternal center. In there, as Wayne Dyer says, we see as Source sees. We experience our oneness with Source. So when we want to accept unconditional love, we're not needy about expecting love to make us different from who we are now. We already love ourselves maturely. We don't love ourselves because we deserve it, because we've earned it. We love ourselves because that's our job. Our job is to always be on our own side, always to be anchored in our eternal center. There's some attitudes we practice when we want to accept unconditional love. One of them, as we've said, is worthiness. We know our worthiness. Because we're humans, because we have a human center and an eternal center, we accept ourselves. We know we're worthy. We're not worthy because of our words or our deeds. We're worthy because of our being. And we always know our worthiness. We carry that attitude around with us every minute of every day, no matter what we're doing, no matter where we're going. We know our worthiness. This in itself is a wonderful lesson to learn, isn't it? Another attitude we practice in order to accept unconditional love is we leave our thinking behind. Don't be realistic. Don't use your logic. That has no place in your eternal center. We don't need our minds saying, I judge this to be okay, I judge that to be okay, and that's just not possible. No one's ever done that, so don't even think about it. No, that doesn't fit in our eternal center when we're opening to accept unconditional love. We're simply available. We show up. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're available for a miracle. And miracles happen when we get our heads out of the way. So know your worthiness. Stop thinking. Don't be realistic. And practice openness. Openness is, I don't know what can happen. I don't know what my limits are. Maybe I'm not limited. I don't know what Source wants to do with my life, but I'm available. I'm open. I show up. I practice presence. And I'm willing to be surprised. So practice worthiness. Stop thinking. Don't be realistic. Be open and available. And the last one is practice surrender. A surrendered way of living is a good way to live, especially in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and thereafter. We've had decades to run our will, to do our lives our way, to think and plan and work and effort and struggle. And we've seen the results that's gotten us. Some of them have been fine, or they haven't, but now it's time to move on. We sense deeper rumblings inside us, and we want to give them their due. We want to pay attention to our deeper inner worlds. We choose not to do the next 30 years the way we've done the last 30 years because we know there's more to us than that. We have a depth to us now that we couldn't imagine in the first part of our lives. We may not be able to define it, but in our souls, we know that this, whatever our life is, that this life, whatever form that is, can't be everything. This can't be it. We've worked so hard, and we've made a really decent life for ourselves, but we know there's more. We long for greater meaning, and it's with more than hope that we count on finding this greater meaning. We listen to our intuitive glimpses acutely, and we may not be able to reason them, to make sense of them, to rationalize, but we trust our intuition in a way we never have before. We seem to know that our intuition is anchored in wisdom, and we have to follow our intuition. We don't have to understand our intuition. We don't have to know how things are going to turn out. But in our souls, we know we have to trust our intuition. Because if we don't, we've pulled a curtain on our own life. And suddenly, somehow, that becomes the greatest crime there is, to curtail our own individuality ourselves because we close down on our aliveness. So there's this intense need to be vital, to be alive, to be open, and to let life show us, to let life guide us. At this point in our lives, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, we're willing to embrace a vulnerability which in the early part of our lives scared us to death. The first part of our lives was about getting away from vulnerability. It was about building a strong and acceptable foundation for being a human in the world, competing with other humans, fitting in, knowing the rules, looking the part. But now, it seems okay to announce to the world that really, we don't know exactly what we want, or what we're doing, or even who we're becoming. But that's okay, because we commit to the process of living our lives momentarily with presence and passion in all the things that are really important. I'm going to say that again. We commit to living our lives momentarily, in the moment, with presence, being aware of what is this second, who I am this second, and with passion, which is saying yes to whatever exists this second in front of me, embracing what is this second. And that commitment carries us. That's surrender. We're not concerned with outcomes. The first part of our lives we were. We had goals. We had 5-year plans. We wanted to make something happen. But now that we're practicing surrender, particular outcomes are irrelevant. They were all consuming in the first half of life. We went to school for long years. Our entry-level jobs paid our dues. We looked forward to someday in the future when we could be somebody. Well, now that far-off day is here. We've paid our dues. Maybe we've arrived, but whether or not we've been rewarded for our efforts, we're just not satisfied with what we were interested in the first half of life. And we can't convince ourselves that setting another goal and embarking on another project will assuage our restlessness. We already know how to do that. We've done it over and over and over again. So why do that one more time? Do we really need to complete one more goal, to complete one more project? Let's do something different. We don't have the energy of the days, which seem to be dwindling increasingly rapidly. Wasn't it only yesterday when at 25 we embarked on our life work? And now, in our 40s, 50s, 60s, now we focus on today, not the future, not our goals. Today. What has been great, and it's been just fine, but now we know there's more. Deep in our souls, we know there is so much more. There has to be. We've mastered every challenge life has presented to us, and we're saying to ourselves, now what? Is this it? There must be more. Our logical minds can't answer that question, can't tell us what more. It can only tell us to do the same things we have done, but we've already decided we're moving deeper than that. So we move out of our minds. That isn't where our dissatisfaction originates anyway. Our dissatisfaction comes from someplace closer to the middle of us, nearer our hearts, but even deeper. And we realize that living from our deepest center is absolutely essential at this time in our lives and for every day forward. We feel like we're not truly alive if we're not living from our deepest center. And we're not alive if we know the last step we want to take before we take the first one. We yearn for an adventure of a sort that we've never taken, an adventure of our spirit, and that demands complete surrender and trust. How does that sound to you? Complete surrender and trust. That surrender, when it finally happens, when we're finally willing to climb into the back seat and go along for the ride, is freeing in a way we haven't experienced before. We're not trying to drive the car anymore. We don't know where we're going or what's going to happen. We're in the back seat, and we're trusting. We're letting someone else guide us. The joy from that freedom, from letting go of control, of thinking, of planning, of all the shoulds we've always lived with, all the limits that are self-imposed, that freedom is exciting. Our minds are not the tool we rely on anymore. We'll never lose our good judgment, of course. but we've moved to a deeper level where thinking restricts our aliveness, and we cannot tolerate anything that artificially limits the spirit inside us. We align with our life spirit, and by committing to follow it, we surrender. We practice surrender every day. We're completely ready and able to do so. Even if we can't leave our jobs, for whatever reason, we still need the income, there are still children in school, we can find other expressions for our creativity. We live creatively. We see differently. We feel differently. We experience ourselves differently. We don't feel tied up by ropes. We live from our souls. We feel our innate connections to other people, maybe to folks we haven't even met, and we feel joined with them in their struggles. Our compassion for them flows from someplace deeper within ourselves than we have lived most of our lives. We see this experience of life as such an open, amazing adventure that's available to us, that it takes our breath away, this opportunity that we've been given. Life looks so different to us when we live with surrender, because we're walking through our days always in partnership, always aware that Source is with us. So we commit to surrender every day, and then we commit to it 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 times during the day. And by surrendering, we acknowledge a force, Source, that we do not control. And we commit to work with Source. We commit to our partnership. When we practice surrender, we commit to partnership with Source. And this partnership answers our longing for something more, something deeper, something lasting. This union feels like a reunion, like we've come back to a part of ourselves, to a home that we've forgotten. There's a rightness and a certainty about living in partnership. And we know that that's the only way to live now that makes any sense. It looks on the outside like it makes no sense at all, but in our hearts, it's like we've come home. And this is what we want to practice when we open to accepting unconditional love. This is accepting unconditional love. So as you go through your week and you're committing to your partnership every day, you're aware of Source being with you. It's almost like being in conversation with Source. I need a parking place. Show me a parking place. Make this interaction go easily. I'm not sure about this phone call. Will you pave the way? We don't have to understand the answers ourselves, because it's not about where we're going, it's about how we're going. So we defer to Source. We say, show me the path, show me the way, handle this for me. I don't know how to do this, show me. So we're always available for partnership. We're always aware. That means we're always anchored in our eternal center. And we live from there with joy and creativity, and we experience that unconditional love. And that is so confirming and so much fun. I hope you enjoy this week accepting unconditional love, living in your eternal center, practicing partnership. And we'll talk again next week on Living in the Flow Radio, on the amazing Women of Power Network, My book is Accepting Unconditional Love. It's available from Amazon. My website is Meditation Intro. Thank you.